I'm here with Dr. Howard Williamson, Professor in European Youth Policies at University of South Wales. You have just told a presentation at a seminar serie on youth housing and jobs that Global Utmaning arranges together with Riksbyggen. And firstly, you gave a presentation on European health policies, basically like an international outlook. But how important is housing when it comes to youth policies? Is that something that you talk about normally?
We don't talk about it at all, really. We should be doing so, and we should have been doing so for about 10 years. But by and large, housing doesn't figure in many people's thinking about youth policy. In some countries, yes, there's some thought about it, but it's a very neglected area, and of course it's absolutely critical as part of the transition pathways for young people.
And how come it's so neglected?
I think that it's taken a long time to even build an understanding of youth policy that accommodates health and crime and other things, and housing's kind of at the back of the queue. But it's slowly getting there, because we all know how difficult it is for young people to make transitions into independent living.
Okay, and young people, who are you exactly referring to? Is it more specific vulnerable groups, or who is included in the young people?
This is the age-old definitional question, yes. And it is, of course, the whole population of an age group. The age group is usually somewhere between 15 and 35, 12 to 30, 18 to 30. It varies a lot, but by and large it's late teenage years into the late 20s.
But can you really speak about young people as such a united group when they have so different backgrounds and priorities?
Well, you can't. You have to differentiate fairly carefully between young people. There are clearly some young people, perhaps 10 to 20% of many youth populations, who are very vulnerable on a lot of fronts. A lot of reasons: school exclusion, crime, drugs, pregnancy, public care systems, those kinds of young people. But more and more young people are finding, big difficulties in moving to the kind of adulthood that we traditionally envision for them, because of the employment situation, and of course that has a knock-on effect on their capacity to move into independent housing and other things.
Yeah. You also talked about the need to create new ways of integrating houses with other policy areas. Could you say something about that?
Well, we tend to talk, when we talk about housing, which isn't so often, we tend to talk about affordability, but affordability is contingent upon income and earnings. So the first obvious place to look is to think about integrating housing with labour market opportunities, and particularly with training opportunities, perhaps even vocational training opportunities, where self-building programs could be established, where young people learn building skills as well as creating their own accommodation. More creative thinking about use of underused buildings by young people to create spaces for living for themselves. Accommodation and employment programs like the foyer movement, things like that. We need to be looking at connecting housing to wider aspects of youth policy and the wider aspirations of young people.
And is there a general tendency to integrate these areas even more, or how is the state of it?
There's never a tendency to connect anything, because politically there's no real career benefits from sort of muddying the waters. But if we're sensible and rational and looking at using resources appropriately and to the best effect, we should be looking creatively about how we can merge education and health programs, housing and training programs, those kinds of things. And if we look at some of those things, they make eminent sense in terms of what we want young people to reach and what young people themselves aspire to.
Very good, thank you so much.